Hello, and welcome to Retrospective Cinema, a podcast wherein we'll endeavor week after week to see the full filmographies of chosen directors. We'll interpret, critique, and discuss. I'm your co-host, Ryan Saylor.
And I am your other co-host, Annie Morell. This week, we are continuing our run of Paul Thomas Anderson's films with Phantom Thread. Here's a clip.
When did this happen? What happened to make you behave like this? Is it because you think I don't need you?
Yes.
I don't.
Well, that's very predictable of you. Don't act so tough. I know you are not.
That was from Phantom Thread, but before we get into that, or even the side projects, prior to Phantom Thread, we actually did get some feedback this week that we want to go over. So Annie has that right here.
Yeah, so my very own brother submitted some feedback. Shout out to Kenny Morell about Inherent Vice that I thought was some really good points. He says, first, when Bigfoot is first introduced, the narrator does refer to him as a SAG member, but it could just be more of Doc's own weird imaginings if you believe that route. I'll start with that. I did not catch the SAG member
Nor did I.
reference. But yeah, it fully supports my thoughts that he wanted to be an actor. So thank you, Kenny, for supporting me. His second comment that he made was, my take on Bigfoot was he, at least to some extent, had feelings for his partner. I don't remember exactly what was said, but the way he was described mourning his partner felt a lot more personal than just mourning the loss of someone you worked with, which in my opinion also gives credit to all of the phallic homoerotic imagery. But that's just my thought. I totally see that. I didn't really even think about that, but I do see that as a possibility. And it, again, just informs what I was kind of thinking, that maybe Bigfoot was interested in Doc in some way, in some romantic way. So thank you, Kenny, for giving us those insights. And if anyone else wants to give us insights, you don't even have to be related to me. You can just comment on Instagram, on TikTok. You can send us an email. So many ways to get your commentary and thoughts read on the show and discussed.
Yeah. Before we get into Phantom Thread, there were a number of projects in between Inherent Vice, his previous film, and this film, Phantom Thread. We are not going to go through all of them in depth. This is a similar number to, if you remember, our Punch Drunk Love episode, where there was just so much. So we're going to hit a couple things rapid fire real quick. He made a couple music videos for Joanna Newsom, which, if you remember, she played Sortilege in the previous film. That's really her main film credit. Outside of that, she's mostly been a singer-songwriter and accomplished harp player. So it makes sense that they were collaborating already, her and his film, so then he filmed a couple music videos for her. Well, we will talk about Daydreaming, but there were two other Radiohead videos. Obviously, PTA had been collaborating with Johnny Greenwood for time now, since There Will Be Blood. Johnny Greenwood, the guitarist for Radiohead and composer for lots of great film scores at this point. So it makes sense that they were collaborating. Radiohead was making A Moon-Shaped Pool. So Daydreaming, there's some stuff to talk about. But the other two, PTA just kind of filmed Tom York and Johnny Greenwood doing live recordings of a couple songs on the album. The funniest thing of note to me is that A Moon-Shaped Pool at this point, as of recording, remains Radiohead's last album. They never officially broke up, but Tom York and Johnny Greenwood formed a new band, The Smile, and the only difference between that lineup and Radiohead is they switched out the drummer. So on these videos, the fact that the drummer was a drum machine and just wasn't there, I was like, oh, yeah, that's...
And then Daydreaming was more of a real, quote-unquote, music video. Did you look up the history or the kind of background info on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what you're going to bring forward, but I was curious about other people's interpretations, because the video kind of has Tom York jumping between places, some of them mundane, some of them, exceedingly beautiful, everywhere from, a laundromat to the peak of a mountain. Just anytime he enters a door, he ends up somewhere new. There were lots of different interpretations for what this all meant. What were you going to say?
Oh, I had read that his former partner had died the year that this came out. They had, I think, split up the year previous, and she had died of cancer the year that Daydreaming came out. And so the idea is that he is searching for her This is not fact checked in any way. Also, I should say that he's kind of looking all around for her, and I think he even kind of returns to the same house at one point a few times. But yeah, and then he kind of ends up by the end of the video, he ends up climbing into this little snow cave in this kind of cold isolation, but there's also a fire in the cave. So I kind of interpreted that as maybe some sort of hope. Did you read what I read? Am I wrong?
No, I mean that I read that. That's a perfectly reasonable interpretation. I read the video as kind of an interpretation of Polito's allegory for the cave, or allegory of the cave. This person that, you know, lives here and kind of thinks about what's outside. I don't think I totally agree with that. I think what you read is closer. At the end, there's some reversed audio, and it's Tom York repeatedly saying half of my life. So there's a couple ways to read that, though. Some viewers pointed out that York walks through 23 doors specifically in the video, and there had been 23 years of Radiohead at that point, which was roughly half of York's life. He was 48 at the time of recording. That does also, though, correspond to he'd been with his partner about the same amount of time. Johnny Greenwood retweeted, I think, someone posting a theory that the different locations tied to different songs throughout Radiohead's discography. So I think it's a combination of things, but I think it's more or less Tom York kind of thinking back at this point in his life. And that whole album is very much a reflection. If you don't know, A Moon-Shaped Pool was all of the unreleased or unfinished songs. They hadn't recorded them yet. So the unfinished songs from Radiohead's previous years, like one track had been played live already for like 8 years at that point. And then the album goes in alphabetical order through the rest of the songs. And then, yeah, that's the end of Radiohead as of today. So it would make sense that, you know, York was feeling reflective during this time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that it's kind of multidimensional in that way. And what a coincidence that 23 is such a relevant number in multiple ways for him and for the band. Moving on to the Hyam section, there are a few, though I think we're mainly going to be talking about Valentine.
Yeah. So there was Right Now, but Right Now is just a segment from Valentine, so
yeah,
we'll skip that.
And then Little of Your Love, which I guess maybe we can briefly talk about that. It was cute, like kind of a line dancing. I think the main thing I took from this one was Alana Haim's film chemistry, like chemistry on film, is on full display. Like for me at least, I was like drawn to her the most.
No, absolutely. So I was thinking during that video, back a couple episodes, we talked about, you know, why did PTA pick Adam Sandler? And in an interview, he said, I liked his face. I was thinking about that comment again during Little of Your Love, because it just seems like PTA would much rather film Alana Haim's face than the other two sisters. There's a great moment right at the start of the video. So it starts with Esty, and then it stays on her until Alana gets on screen and just whips to Alana. And then when it should transition to the third sister, instead it like lingers on Alana like a little longer. So I just was like, I see you. I see what you're doing here.
Literally screen testing his next lead actress. I'm so glad you felt the same. But yeah, it was cute. I liked it. Put a smile on my face. Definitely, if you need a good kind of uplifting watch that is short, go watch Little of Your Love's music video because it's adorable. And then Valentine's, about 14 minutes long, has 3 songs. It starts with Right Now, which is, you know, a solo music video in and of itself as well. And then they do 2 more songs. And then it's this kind of, it's like they're in the studio recording, but this very kind of dreamy color palette. It reminded me of the color grading on Punch Drunk Love a lot, especially that like icy blue at the end. It's these like stripped down, very intimate recordings. It's not like the full recording that's released on their albums of these songs. It really showcases just how much of the band is Danielle. Like definitely all of the sisters contribute, but Like Danielle is this kind of triple threat where she is the main vocalist, the drummer, and can play the guitar. And so you see a lot of her like jumping around these different instruments.
Yeah, it was fun to watch them all move around. And they clearly are having fun. Like they're making faces at each other and getting into the music. It's a 2-camera shoot, which I didn't realize for quite a while because most of the first song is filmed with 1 camera and then it shifted suddenly. And like it says it's recorded live. So I said, wait a second. But you actually do see right before the 3rd song that they set up the 2nd camera. So it did exist the whole time. And then neither here nor there, and definitely would have been a more fun Easter egg in 2017 than it is today. But in their final little percussion credit sequence that isn't a part of any of the songs, at the very end, I'm 99% sure that as a cool down, they're playing the drum part of Black Skinhead by Kanye West.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, they start with a, and I said, whoa, that sounds like it. And then it just kept going and did the whole opening. Slightly slowed down, but I think that song is slightly sped up because it's artificial drums. So yeah, I'm pretty sure, at least. I have no source on that. I couldn't find anyone else talking about it, but yeah. If you listen to the end of Valentine and the front of Black Skinhead back to back, I think you will agree with me.
Wow. Well, I'll have to do that now. Although, yeah, really, really wish I had known that in 2017 and not now. Oh, well.
Yeah, we haven't talked about, actually, so his longest project and most unique in the midst of all this, and again, a collaboration with Johnny Greenwood. He filmed a documentary. So Johnny Greenwood collaborated with a composer, I hope I get this name right, Shai Ben Shir. He's an Israeli composer that now lives in India. He's Jewish, but he records Islamic worship music. Just fascinating cross-cultural stuff going on. Yeah, Johnny Greenwood liked his work. They started talking, and then they started on this orchestral album with some vocals and brought Paul Thomas Anderson along to record some of the process. So what'd you think of this?
It was a mixed bag for me. I think I didn't look up anything about the documentary prior, but afterwards I did learn that I guess PTA lost a lot of his camera gear in the flight to India, and that makes me want to give him a little more grace because I think the parts that are music, the parts that are capturing these very talented musicians all collaborating. It's so many people collaborating. It's very cool the way that he captures it. He kind of does his long tracking shots and some signature moves for him, and that part is great. There are bits which, again, he did apparently borrow this from someone else. There are bits with a drone that I thought looked incredibly dated, and this isn't that old.
Oh, yeah.
And just really kind of cheesy and not professional, not something I would ever think to see from PTA, especially at this point in his career. And I get that he wanted to show, the the landscape, but wow, it really took me out of it quite a bit. And I think it's overall, it kind of just I don't know, it's like a mood documentary more than anything else, because it's very much just kind of as if you're sitting in the room with them, which I think is cool. Yeah, I don't know. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, ultimately I did enjoy it, but my quick little letterboxd thoughts, I wrote exactly what you're talking about. And it's best when it just lets the music speak for itself, and it's worse when the 2015 drone footage kicks in.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It's hideous at times, but every now and then you get this beautiful stuff like you're talking about, these long shots capturing the musicians. There's some stuff on top of, because they got to record this album in like a temple, but at the top there's like this area where all these birds come, and we get to see a lot of footage of this man feeding birds. That's just beautiful. So there's stuff here that's great, and I ultimately did enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It is kind of just a one note thing.
Yeah, and the music is great. I think the one other thing that I do want to mention is I enjoyed the little interlude where someone goes into town with his harmonium.
Yes.
Shout out to Punch Drunk Love, where a harmonium is prominently featured. This man is going to town to get his harmonium tuned, and it's kind of juxtaposed with this like electric keyboard being looked at, and just watching them like work on the actual physical work that it takes to tune a harmonium and maintain the instrument was really cool. But yeah, I agree.
From this point forward, I guess we should mention we are a full spoiler podcast. Today's feature is Phantom Thread. The last thing we have to talk about before that is, just like with Punch Drunk Love and The Master, PTA has repurposed some of the footage that didn't make it into the film as a short film. I think it was least necessary here. There doesn't seem to be enough to really make anything of note. Punch Drunk Love, Blossoms and Blood, I think was what it was called. It showed our characters in a different way. Something like Back Beyond really added to the film, Inherent Vices as well. This one, I don't know. I didn't get much out of it. It's nice. There's a scene on a boat that's lovely, but a bulk of this is just a scene from the movie again.
Yeah.
Which made me feel like there just might not have been reason for this time other than it was tradition. So I know, I was curious what you thought.
I agree. I was surprised. The whole narration is absolutely, or Alma's narration is absolutely in the movie. And a lot of the shots were in the movie, or at least like similar enough ones that I couldn't really tell the difference. I think the one major new thing that we saw was just another clip of them as a family, like having a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only thing that stuck out to me, really. And I did like that. So it's this interior shot. Woodcock is like reading the newspaper or something, and Alma is playing with their child and like being kind of loud, which sound is something we will talk a lot about, I'm sure, in our forthcoming discussion of the main film. The fact that he seemed at least outwardly unbothered by the ruckus of the child, I thought was something. It is, I think the thing I appreciated about it too was that you get sort of the 3 stages of their love, of at least like the sweet and happy moments of their love, where you get that restaurant scene where they first meet, that's very sweet and cute, and then the kind of middle scenes of them falling in love and then cutting to their having a family together. I think maybe that was the intent, was just to show the full spectrum of like, or even because honestly, like it looks like a pretty good, if you had just seen this short film and nothing else, you'd be like, oh, they're so cute, what a cute couple.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right, let's talk about Phantom Thread. Phantom Thread came out in 2017. It marks, not that there's a total consistency across PTA's filmography, but it definitely felt of a departure. It's a period piece. It's notably nowhere near Los Angeles and very quietly violent. Some people really embraced it. Some people thought it didn't pay off in the ways that may have been intended. At this point, 8 years on, I think it's starting to really be looked at fondly, but yeah, tell me about your experience watching this film. And had you seen it before? I was going to ask.
I had seen it before. I saw it when it came out. The Varsity Theater in Ashland, shout out indie movie theaters. And I really enjoyed it the first time. I don't think I went in being like, all right, this is going to be a PTA film at that point in my life. And so I think that was probably helpful in not having many expectations other than being a huge fan of Daniel Day-Lewis. And yeah, I also think this is one of his films that is, it's not for the ladies, but it is like, it feels a lot more feminine to me than a lot of his other films. Maybe it's just because this is one of the first times, if not the first time, that our main protagonist is a woman. I was very interested to watch it for the second time. Hadn't watched it since I saw it in theaters. And I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll get to what I thought, whether I would recommend it at the end.
Sure.
But yeah, what is your history with the movie?
Yeah, so I had not seen it since 2017. I watched it with a friend in theaters. I just Harkins, less of a shout out, but it got us through.
Harkin!
Woo! Harkins Chino Hills. There you go. I really liked it at the time. I wasn't sure as much what to do with it, and I've thought about it a lot since then. I've thought that I needed to revisit it, but mainly that was for something that I still think I'm a little curious on after this viewing, which is how it primarily works. It is this romance, and yes, I agree that it's feminine focused. I don't know, woman forward. Anyway. My friend's comment really stayed with me. Right when we finished the film, she was talking about it, and back in 2017, she was like, they were perfect for each other. And I think that is true. But also, obviously, this is horrible and cruel. And in looking online, it seems that people are torn between whether the film isn't an endorsement, that'd be the wrong phrasing, but whether it's saying that these two are doing whatever it takes to be in love. And, you know, it's not saying you should apply this to real life, but for a fictional scenario, it works for them. Or that it's this, you know, horrific story of two people abusing each other, or somewhere in the middle. And I, after this viewing, I'm still unsure. I think I leaned more toward the horror of it all in 2017. And this time, I really did find that they did love each other in this weird way. So yeah, what'd you make of all of it? I've been waiting to hear your opinion all week.
Yeah, I see both those interpretations, definitely. I think I'm almost inclined to say that the film is saying that it's kind of impossible to know unless you're the two of them. And I think, you know, that's my personal belief about relationships is no one knows them better than the two people who are involved in the relationship. I mean, my last note is toxic relationships can last. 'Cause yeah, you know, they're both perfect for each other and also the bane of the other's existence quite often. And it's not an endorsement of the relationship, certainly. And I think maybe I even had the opposite journey that you had, where I definitely felt the love this time, the second watch. But I do think it has a little bit of a horror bent at the end when you realize, like, oh, like he likes it. He's into the poisoning. Ugh. It's an unnerving thought. I do think, because he's this almost recluse. I think maybe it's helpful to start with just talking about them as individuals before they meet each other. Reynolds Woodcock, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, is this very prominent fashion designer, runs the House of Woodcock, and it's very clear from the beginning that his main relationship is with his sister Cyril, and women just kind of come and go in his life. They meet, maybe are initially charmed by him and his ability to make them feel so beautiful in his clothing, and then eventually they can't stand each other. Yeah, we see his previous girlfriend to Alma at the very beginning, at the end of their relationship, when it's clear that he no longer can stand her and she's feeling unhappy. And that's when we get our first view of what Cyril and Woodcock's relationship is, which is, to me at least, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Cyril sort of manages every part of his life, including his romantic relationships, because she even asks him, like, oh, should I send her away? He's like, yeah, you probably should. Like, my God.
Yeah, well, the whole film, more or less, and I'm going to answer your question. I'm not derailing us, trust me. It's going to sound like it at first. The whole film, more or less, hinges on this man being haunted by the ghost of his mother, literally at one point, and figuratively in his manifestation of mommy issues. Basically, I think the biggest thing he desires out of companionship is not true partnership in any way. It's a replacement for this motherly figure that he lost. So yes, there are all these other women in his life, but the reason it's always going to be Cyril, until it's not eventually, is that she can fulfill that motherly duty of being there to protect him. And yeah, the second any of his girlfriends are too much, it's back to her. So he needs this figure in his life, and he tries to replace her at times, but fails. And so he's always gonna concede to her, which also paints a lot of their other conversations about the business, about his various things in life very interestingly, because he treats her as his caretaker almost.
Yeah, she feels very much like the manager in a lot of ways, kind of outsourcing his work that he doesn't want to do to her. Mm-hmm. And she's like happy to do it, as long as he understands that she is superior to him ultimately, which we get a glimpse of that finally near the end, when Woodcock kind of oversteps with Cyril at one point, and Cyril gives this like scathing, I wish I could remember the exact quote, but it's something like you will not survive if you challenge me.
Well, but isn't that so? I mean, obviously it's a little different because it's not a true mother to son, but isn't that so motherly to be like, oh, you think you're, you think you're so tough, but like I run this house. Like that's a conversation I'm sure we've all heard from our mom at some point.
Yeah, it's not a partnership. It is a hierarchy. But at the same time, like there is a back and forth between Cyril and Woodcock, because I think there are times when Woodcock does win with her, his authority, his place in the business, I think is important enough that he can win sometimes, as I suppose you do sometimes as a child to a parent. Sometimes you win, but overall, yeah, I definitely see her as a surrogate mother, which is, I mean, mommy issues. The film is really what this should be called.
We get that moment early on when he meets Alma, and we learn that he keeps like locks of his dead mother's hair just next to his chest. And it's if
I'm running far away.
Exactly. Yeah, if someone told me that on a first date, I'd say, it's been nice. But yeah, it's clearly wanting someone to replace that hole in his life.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, she's a constant presence, right? There are few moments, especially early on in his and Alma's relationship, where they are truly alone together. She goes to dinner with them, goes on a dinner date, and really it feels like Alma is the third wheel and not Cyril in scenes like that. And it's only later on that we get a few more moments just between the two of them, and he's he takes it as this inevitability, like of course Cyril's going to be here, I don't even have to tell Alma. But moving on to, I guess, when he first meets Alma, she's just a waitress at this breakfast place, and it's the scene that is repeated in the short film as well, where he orders this obscenely large breakfast from her, and the entire scene is, I mean, it's one of the most like sensual scenes, I think, at least in PTA's repertoire, but maybe in all of film, because it's just so, if you look at the dialogue that they are speaking just on a page, it's nothing. It is a customer service experience, but it's all in the delivery, it's all in the eye contact, the distance that they lock eyes from a distance as she is maneuvering around, not particularly gracefully. It's not like, oh, she's this undiscovered beauty. I mean, I think in a way she is, but she's like a little clumsy, and he is charmed by her. Curious to know if you felt the same, or if you.
Yeah, I think the whole film is very erotic, despite there being not even a semblance of sex here. The most true sensuality you get, like in the traditional sense, there's kissing that extends on to like right before Reynolds is gonna vomit. She's like on the floor making out with him, but then he's like, all right, you should leave because I'm about to puke my brains out. And it's not, he's more eloquent than that most of the time. Most of the eroticism simply just comes from our performers having such chemistry and making even the most mundane thing feel very intimate. And I guess obviously also PTA's direction, because we get those scenes like when she's being dressed, it's so vulnerable, and then when a person's brought into that scene, she instantly like feels out of place, like someone's being let in on their sex life almost. She's being cheated on, but it's just someone else seeing her get dressed. So that there's a way the characters respond, there's a way that everything is shot, that just this whole film is so erotic despite there being no sex.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When they go on this dinner date after their initial meet cute, and he is immediately very controlling and objectifying her at dinner. He rubs her lipstick off of her lips because he wants to see her. He really watches her eat. Yeah. It's immediately like this establishment of control over her, that she is the model and he's the creator. And then it leads into him bringing her back, taking her measurements, and then Cyril eventually showing up and really killing the vibe in a very intentional like show of dominance from Cyril. I think she smells her
Yes.
like
That
when they
is
first
correct.
meet. Gives a little sniff, and at the same time the dominance from Reynolds continues. He comments on the size of her breasts and then says it's okay. I can give you breasts if I choose
Yeah.
to. So it's again like this control, sensual, but also like,
Right.
oh no.
Well, so one thing that I had long since forgotten about, because it has faded from the cultural consciousness, is that this came out not too long after the 50 Shades of Grey movies, when that was the cultural zeitgeist. And not that this film is directly in conversation with them, but that idea, an experienced woman coming to a very experienced man and then him like controlling her in such a way, was something that was kind of back in popular literature. So yeah, that kind of trope was really back at the forefront. So I did wonder if PTA was kind of grabbing from that, and that also pointed me to why it's a period piece at all, because this isn't based on a book that, you know, took place in an earlier time, and it's really not integral to the plot that it takes place when it does. But I think because it's drawing on that trope of like a younger woman meeting an older man and falling in love, you know, some of the most famous instances of that are things like Jane Eyre, for example, which obviously less erotic than something like 50 Shades of Grey, and this is the first and only time I've put those in the same sentence. But yeah, so I think he's working with a lot of tropes for a lot of the film, and that's eventually what's going to be so subverted, is that it ends up being Alma in control, as opposed to all of these other works where the man is the one in control of the relationship.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I do. I mean, I was kind of setting it up for revealing the power switch between them at the end. And I love that subversion of that trope. I actually didn't clock it as being around the same time as 50 Shades of Grey. That wasn't really on my radar. Another thing I wrote down, because Cyril does some negging. I think they both kind of neg her in that fitting scene. Cyril says he likes a little belly.
I hated that. Yeah, because she says, you know, you're his ideal body type, and she's like, oh, thanks, and she's like, oh, he likes a little bit of belly.
Yeah. Oh man. I did think I think not super far after that, she pretty quickly is a part of the household. She's part model, part live-in girlfriend, part seamstress. She does like work with some of the other seamstresses at the House of Woodcock. And at one point, they do this photo shoot with her and Woodcock, and he is posed. She's, you know, in one of his dresses. She looks gorgeous, and oh my gosh, the costuming. I mean, the costuming had to be great for a film like this,
Right.
and it really, really is. Just gorgeous, gorgeous dresses, and to create like a signature look for a designer who does not exist is, I think, quite impressive. But anyway, they do this photo shoot. She's in one of his dresses, and he is also a part of the photo shoot. He's on the ground. They're trying to pose him on the ground looking up at her, which I think is a great like foreshadowing moment that the power dynamic is going to change.
Yeah, and he didn't like being there. I assume you noted that too.
I think just in general, I want to point out how much of a dick he is. He is not a man you would want to live with. He's very blunt. He's very childish. He doesn't let her scrape her toast with butter at breakfast. And Cyril backs him up on that. Like, maybe you should have your breakfast at a different time than him. Just that kind of typical genius who is very, very particular, and people allow him to be very particular because he is a genius. I don't even know what he says this in response to, but he says, what do you want me to do with that, to Alma? Like, at one point, just so rude. I would be out the door if someone said that to me, I hope. Ugh. And she does learn also from all of this, from call outs, because a little bit later, there's a scene again at the breakfast table, and man, she is buttering that toast quietly. She stands up to him at certain points, but she also adapts as needed. Like, she's she's clearly incredibly intelligent and understands that she kind of has to be more of the adult almost in this relationship and pick her battles. And if buttering her toast quietly is one of those battles that she has to lose, then I guess so be it.
Yeah, I was so tuned into, especially knowing where this film goes. I think it is just better on a rewatch because you kind of see that she started her plan prior to when the film really reveals it. Because I don't think that you can, on a first watch, fully see what she's doing until she poisons him for the first time. Then it's like, whoa, like you had this in you this whole time. But yeah, when you know it's coming, you start to see, that she adapts in certain ways. She's going to be quieter here. She's going to say what he needs to hear here. And then sometimes she's going to really go against him. And yeah, that the big cooking for him, seeing the asparagus sequence when when they're alone and it's just them. Yeah, on a first watch, it's like, oh, how could she be so naive as to do this? And on a second watch, it's like she knows it's going to fall apart. And she's accounting for that. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I mean, the woman just wants to be alone with her partner once in a while. Yeah, and of course it's intentional. She had to know about the olive oil versus the butter on the asparagus. And you even see, like, the first time he gets sick when she hasn't poisoned him, that she's learning, like, oh, wow, this is the man that I first met, basically. Sweet. And like, well, also this is the only time that he's ever gonna let me take care of him, be affectionate to him even.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do feel very sad for her, but at the same time, she could, like I've said that I would do, like she could leave at any point. She'd be losing a hell of a lot. And I think she knows that and he knows that, he'll ultimately be fine, but she would be plunged back into what I assume is like a lower class world since she was waitressing. And so there are a certain amount of stakes just outside of, I think that their love is genuine and she does love him. But I think she also loses a lot more than just a love if she gets kicked out of the House of Woodcock.
Yeah, let me ask you, at this point in PTA's filmography, and I think the big benefit of doing what we're doing on this show is that we get to kind of see how it all connects. We've seen PTA's not opinion on love necessarily, but the way he writes love a number of times. Probably at his most pure is obviously Punch Drunk Love, and then all the way through Inherent Vice with the way that he subverted that text so that he could portray the love between Doc and Shasta, which I think I pronounced wrong all of last episode, so that was cool.
You did? And I was like, well, maybe you just think you're right because I'm saying it right. But
anyway, how does this film build on what we've seen PTA's opinions on love to be, or how does it change it for you? Does this paint a clearer picture or does it obstruct it? Because yeah, I have my own thoughts.
I think it paints a clearer picture. I mean, I think honestly, this and Punch Drunk Love are such a weird but cool potential double feature pairing because I think in very, very different ways they are both. We I think said this in our Punch Drunk Love episode. They're both about finding a person who matches your freak.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that that's what happens ultimately in this movie. I feel like his view on love more and more based on all these viewings is something like, it's not going to be the fairy tale, like real love is not ever going to be the fairy tale love that we see in a lot of literature. And it's going to be this like messy, weird thing. And there are so many weird people in this world and people who are almost unmatchable, I guess. And yet I almost think the message is like, you can find your person. It is possible no matter who you are, no matter how unlovable you may appear. And whether that's a good thing or not, you can find someone who will be attracted to that and who will bear your quirks and maybe even like your quirks. I think that's where I'm landing at so far. What's your thought?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. It's with Punch Drunk Love, the characters were heightened, obviously, but heightened in a way that was more, I don't know, forgivable, I guess. Obviously, you feel for Barry in that movie. Like, for example, it's as much as he's doing all these things that, you might say like, whoa, in real life, like, yeah, staying with him through that whole film, you're like, this is an anxiety-ridden man and you're rooting for him. This film, yeah, Reynolds and Alma, by the time you get a full picture of both, are doing things that are objectively horrible. Yeah, I think what I struggled with and what I was referring to earlier is I do think the film says that they're perfect for each other. And I do think this helps me clarify PTA's opinions on love. I think that that can still be beautiful while acknowledging that these characters, shouldn't really. Maybe they should be together in fiction, but in real life, please don't. That both of these should probably step away from anyone ever. That if in his art, these characters that have heightened versions of maybe what you are in real life can work it out, then you can too, is I think the conclusion I can come to, and be satisfied and not horrified that perhaps PTA is condoning poisoning your partner. I don't think he is. I think it's just the characters, but yeah, I think that's the way I can reconcile the messaging here.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, it's an abusive relationship. So I definitely don't think that he's glorifying it. But then again, eventually Woodcock does consent to her abuse. So I don't know what that says, really.
Okay, I guess. So yeah, so let's talk about it then. This final moment in what is easily for me my favorite scene from the film. I've named the scene Preparing an Omelet, where, yeah, you see that Reynolds is aware that he's about to be poisoned, and does consent to it so that their relationship can kind of get back on track, where he can be this frail boy again and Alma can be his motherly lover, and that can be where Alma can show her affection and love him, and that's where he can show his affection and love her. What do you make of all this? What is it beautiful? Is it true partnership? Is it a tragedy in its own way? Like what is this?
I mean, I think it's a tragedy in its own way, but before I expand upon that, I have a question for you. Do you think that the fact that the first time that Reynolds gets sick from the mushrooms, he has this very vivid hallucination of his mother, the ghost of his mother in his room? They don't talk or interact, but he gets to be in her presence again. Do you think that has any bearing on why he is okay with being poisoned?
Yeah, certainly. I think he takes that as a sign, because he talks about earlier in the film that he's comforted by the idea of dead people watching over him. That's a paraphrase, but it's something like that's not far off.
Yeah.
Whereas other people kind of fear the afterlife. And so, yeah, I think when he has this moment where he sees his mom, I think that's what allows him to finally say, like, okay, I want to be here.
I mean, I think it's ultimately this man who works himself to the bone. Like when he is legitimately sick, not from the poison, he still shows up to work and ends up ruining someone's wedding dress because he passes out. But yeah, this is a workhorse of a man who doesn't know how to take a break, and here's this woman coming in and facilitating that for him in a very strange and maybe cruel way. And I think, yeah, it's not healthy, but I think he sees it as like, oh, well, this could be sustainable. Like, I have my little breaks where I'm really sick. I get my care from my mother wife, and she gets what she wants from me in that time, and then we go on making beautiful clothes together. Is kind of my interpretation of that. Why he's okay with being poisoned, like, because it is rough. Like the first time that we see him get poisoned, it is a near-death experience. If it is the mushroom that I think it is, which is a jack-o'-lantern mushroom, you can't actually die from those, I don't believe. You just get incredibly nauseous and you get diarrhea. I know this as a forager. They're a dupe for a chanterelle mushroom. For the mushroom heads out there.
Wow, yeah, that was some niche insight that I would have never had.
Hey, PNW. Anyway, like assuming that she knows that from the book, because she does look up this mushroom, she pretty much knows that he's not going to die, but it does feel like he is really, really close to death.
Right.
And that's terrifying. And like that, it's so different than like, oh, I got a little sick for like 24 hours than like this week or weeks long bout of illness. Such a big sacrifice on his part. So yeah, why do you think he thinks that that's worth it? Or what does he get? Just a mother?
So we finally, at this point they're married in the story. And when he agrees to marry her, which is a shock to like everyone involved, or proposes marriage, not even agrees.
I was
to
gonna
marry her,
say, and I had
she
a question on that.
Counter propose. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a second. That comes after this first bout of sickness, where his mother appears to him. So, I think when he proposes marriage, he realizes that he can get what he's looking for out of a lover, and I don't think he'd be able to verbalize, like so many of PTA's characters. I don't think he's aware of the things going on in his head. Like, I don't think he would say that he's looking for a mother. I think he would say he's looking for a partner, but to him, partnership looks like, a mother. So he falls in love with this woman while she's taking care of him while he's recovering from this horrible illness. And then once he's kind of able to stand on his own 2 feet again, it fades away, right? And so I don't think he's feeling, oh, I get a mother, but I think he's thinking, oh, I get to re-experience that love that I thought was so beautiful. And I don't know that he'll piece together that it's because that's when she's most motherly, but I think he is able to piece together last time we felt that was when I was deathly ill from this mushroom. So let's do it again, and let's see what happens. So I think that's what he's kind of feeling in that moment. And also, I think at this point in the story, though we actually begin the scene without having seen it, it has happened that they danced forever at the New Year's Eve party, which is one of the most perfect shots in cinema.
Gorgeous.
Which I think is why we hold back on it anyway. And I think he finally is able to say, okay, if that's like this was not something I wanted to do at all, for referring to the New Year's Eve party, but this woman refused to back down and it was better for me. And so now maybe he's able to say, like, okay, once again, this is probably not something that he wants to do. No one wants to be poisoned, but yeah, maybe at this point he's willing to see where it goes, because this woman has his best interests at heart.
Yeah.
Asterisk, whatever that means.
Yeah. Mother knows best, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the proposal, because he does propose to her, and she has this super long pause to the point. Like, he is surprised. He's just assuming she's immediately going to say yes. Why do you think she pauses for so long after he proposes?
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier, I read a lot of her interactions differently on the second viewing. I think she's kind of conniving the whole time, and it's not just in these poisoning moments, although this has happened after the first poisoning. But I think she's much more calculating than she really lets on, and that's a larger moment where you can really see that she manipulates his emotions, where he's feeling elated and then horrified and then reluctant and then excited. But yeah, I think she's always very aware of how she's doing things, and she's going to let him win sometimes, and she does in a way. She says yes to his proposal, but she's also gonna fight back in her little ways, and it's making him wait a second, proposing also, so that it's not just one-sided. So yeah, I think just everything's very calculated.
Yeah, I like that. I thought it also might be some sort of guilt over the mushrooms, but also want to point out, when he's sick for the first time from the mushrooms, there's a point where Cyril comes and checks on him, and Alma's there with him. And Cyril says, like, oh, he needs his rest. Come on, Alma. Alma, like, follows her to the door and then shuts the door behind her and stays in the
So good.
So good. And yeah, as you're saying, like, such a calculated move. Like, she knew exactly what she was doing. I think it's when she's serving him the Alma the second time, but correct me if I'm wrong. She does the longest and highest pour of water from this pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So loud. The Foley artist on this, oh, what a Foley artist's dream this movie must have been, to just like capture all these noises so crisply. Yeah, it's all these little digs, all these little reminders, kind of in a very different way than Cyril reminds him that, like, yeah, I've got power too. She really needles him. So too good.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible film. I think it's another one where it can be easy to, and we're seeing that this is kind of changed, but I think at first it was easy to dismiss this as a lesser work, just because it seems so simple at first, and it seems more an exercise in style until you kind of break it down. But yeah, there's so much going on. It's really neat.
I just wanted to talk about the dress rescue scene. One thing I wanted to point out, this is a comedy masquerading as a drama, I think. I think you look at that poster and you think it's going to be this brooding drama, and it just isn't. And I think the best example of that is the dress rescue scene where his, I think, main benefactor has ordered this dress from him, and she clearly has a lot of like personal image issues, and she ends up getting really drunk at this party, and he is forced to go because she is his main benefactor. So he and Alma go, attend, watch her abuse this dress, wipe her mouth on the collar, and she eventually passes out drunk, still in the dress. And Alma, who at this point is very in love with him and in love with his work just as much, I would say, she is angry. She's like, she does not deserve to wear that. And so they go on this rescue mission, and Alma physically takes the dress off of this passed out woman as Daniel Day-Lewis is just like in the doorway, like, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about what's going on here. It's so good. And I just appreciate how deft of a comedic hand Paul Thomas Anderson has, because this is such a dark movie in a lot of other ways. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you did. The comedy. So when I saw this in a theater, I don't think people were laughing very much at all. And I think anytime comedy's not to the forefront in a film, people really struggle with that. Like, every time I've seen a Yorgos Lanthimos in theaters, I'm one of the only people in my audience just having a ball. Yeah, watching this alone, I found myself really finding it quite funny at times. That's a great moment. Just some of the dialogue, some of the when the artifice drops and Reynolds is very harsh to people and telling them to F off or whatever. It's so funny. The fact that he's named Reynolds Woodcock, hilarious.
Which, on that note, I read that Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson said that as like were apparently collaborated on the script quite a bit, to the point where PTA actually considers him almost to be a co-author of the script, which I thought was very interesting. But they were workshopping names for the character, and one of them, as a joke, suggested that name, and it just stuck.
That makes sense, because it's so funny. I mean, it's as obvious as, like, you know, Meet the Fockers or whatever. Like, it's that level. And obviously this is a very different film. I'm not saying that, but yeah, to name your character that, and then for people to miss that there is this comedy underlying is yeah. I was surprised at just how much there was. You brought up that Daniel Day-Lewis collaborated on the script. A couple things also outside the actual film that I think are worth pointing out here. Until this year, actually, we're recording, this was Daniel Day-Lewis's final performance. He went into retirement after this film and announced it prior to the film coming out. I was wondering if there was anything here that you thought he might have grabbed onto as like, that's what I'm going out on, or if it was just that he put so much into it, or what do you think led to that?
I mean, you know, I don't think we know a ton about who he is outside of who the actor himself is, outside of, you know, that he's a major method actor. But I do think, especially because he had so much to do with the script, with the crafting of this character, even on the page, it feels like maybe the closest to him playing himself. It's this, you know, artist who takes himself very seriously, who takes his craft very seriously, Reynolds Woodcock. And that's who we know Daniel Day-Lewis to be. And so I saw the film in 2017 knowing that this was at the time going to be his retirement, and I thought, yeah, perfect. This is a magnum opus performance. He's incredible in this whole film, and it's so close to who I at least imagine him to be, you know. And he's not, I think he sounds the most like himself. If you see like interviews with him, he sounds the most like himself in this movie of any of the films that I've seen him in, at least. And so, yeah, it wasn't surprising at all to me that he was kind of, it was hearkening back to There Will Be Blood. It was his I'm finished moment. That's it. That was the goal. What did you?
No, I like
think
that
of
a lot. I think that's great. I I was aware that, this is a film about an artist making art, and there's always something there. I wondered how much of Reynolds represented PTA, because it's PTA's making this film about a character making something. I like that reading, that it's could be more Daniel Day-Lewis, and probably is a combination of both, but that it's him looking back on his career and having a swan song.
Yeah, and maybe even this is pure speculation, but all these like petty moments that we see with Woodcock like snapping at people do remind me of some of the stories you hear about him on set when he's staying in character and maybe acting like a jerk because his character is a jerk. Yeah, I totally see it. And I was really kind of surprised. This was one of those retirement announcements that I thought, like, yeah, this is probably actually true.
Yeah, and it was for like 8 years. So, I mean, I'd say that's a retirement, at least.
He's supporting his son. I get that.
Yeah. The other extra textual element that I think is worth pointing out, PTA had collaborated with only one cinematographer for a very long time, and they were not available on this film. So this film, PTA was the cinematographer, which I thought was fascinating. So there was someone else doing the actual camera operation, and they are credited as just camera operator. It's Colin Anderson and Carlos Carvalho were camera operators, but the actual cinematography is credited to PTA, and that has continued ever since. So I thought that was fascinating that happened, because he was like, well, my guy's not here, I could probably do it, and did an excellent job. It's crazy how good this film looks.
I mean, I'm not surprised,
Well, it probably is clear. Has been for every PTA film, but would you recommend the film?
Oh yeah, one of my very favorites. My goodness, go see it. It's weird, it's funny, it's horrifying. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? One of those moments again. What about you?
Yeah, it grew so much for me, and I already loved it. I'm debating about, if this suddenly has moved toward the top of my PTA ranking. But yeah, I it's so impressive. I love the period work. I love the performances. It's so impressive. I love, oh my gosh, the lighting, just how this thing looks. I think it had like 3 lighting people when I looked up like the crew, and understandable. It's mostly natural lighting, it appears, but I mean, clearly there's so much work being done to make it look how it looks. And then I just think it inherently just grows in enjoyment when you revisit this and see what Alma is doing the whole time. And as I have since college been exposed to more works of like Jane Eyre, I can see more how the tropes are working here. And yeah, just so impressive. I love it. See it. I guess the only way I wouldn't recommend it is if you just get bored easily, or if you're one of those people that like says, they're in not present day, that sucks,
Or I guess if you were previously poisoned via mushrooms. So this might be like a rough watch for you.
Yeah. The mushroom community, rise up. Go check this one
out.
out.
About to be foraging season.
Oh my gosh.
It actually is.
This is insane.
Yeah, September,
I'm
November.
learning so much.
Well, next week, fast approaching, wrapping up this incredible ride that is PTA's filmography. I'm going to be talking about Licorice Pizza. I'm interested to return to that one. I feel like I wasn't as hot on it the first time. But in the meantime, if you want to let us know your thoughts, mushroom community, if I'm wrong, please let me know in our many comment opportunities.
Reach out to us on something. If you agree, disagree, if you have feedback, any comment you send us can be used in a future episode, and it's just more fun for us to interact with you. So hit us up. Our email is retrospectivecinemapodcast@gmail.com. We have an Instagram where we kind of post updates about what's coming up and polls and such. We have a TikTok where we talk about newer films, and the IG and TikTok are both retro_sin, CIN. On Letterboxd, I'm at Ryan Loves Film.
And I'm at Annie Morell.
And I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll see you next week.
To the Mushroom Kingdom, we dedicate this one. Happy watching.
Oh boy.